He proposed on Valentine's Day. Then the truth walked in wearing a wedding dress.
I need you to understand why she did it. Not forgive her. Just understand. 6 months ago, Amora thought she knew what love looked like. She thought she could spot a lie from a mile away. She was wrong about both. Click now on the subscribe button, as there's a lot to unfold. Amora used to be a private investigator. She specialized in romance fraud. Families would hire her when their daughters got caught up with men who promised forever but delivered financial ruin instead. She'd seen every trick in the book. The love bombing. The sob stories. The manufactured urgency to move fast, commit hard, merge bank accounts. She thought she was immune to it all. She thought watching other people fall apart had built her a shield. Then her little sister Maya met someone. Maya was 24. Fresh out of grad school. Brilliant. Kind. The type of person who saw the best in everyone, sometimes to a fault. She met him at a conference. He was older, charming, successful. Or at least that's what he seemed to be. His name was Daniel Ashford. Within 3 months, they were engaged. Within 6 months, Maya's trust fund was empty. Within 8 months, he was gone. Just vanished. New city, new name, new life. Maya tried to rebuild. She really did. But the shame of it, the humiliation, the way people looked at her like she should have known better, it ate away at her. 2 years ago, she took her own life. Amora's family didn't press charges. They said it would just drag Maya's name through more mud. They said they couldn't prove anything anyway. They said they needed to move on. Amora couldn't move on. She spent 2 years tracking him. Following the breadcrumbs of identity changes, financial transfers, patterns of behavior. She found him in a new city, operating under a slightly different name, same tactics, same smile. And she made a decision that would change everything. She didn't just want to expose him. She wanted him to feel what Maya felt. The hope. The trust. The moment when everything you believed in shatters like glass. So she became someone else. She researched his patterns, his hunting grounds, his type. She learned he frequented charity events, always positioned himself near women who looked successful but a little lonely. Women who seemed like they had their lives together but maybe wondered if love had passed them by. She put herself in his path. She made it look like chance. The night she met him, she wore a blue dress. Simple, elegant. She stood by the donation table at a children's hospital fundraiser, writing a check. He approached with a glass of wine and a carefully crafted opening line about how rare it was to meet someone who gave without needing recognition. She smiled. She laughed at his jokes. She let him think he was choosing her. Everything was going according to plan. She'd document the relationship, gather evidence, build an airtight case, then watch him burn. But here's what she didn't anticipate. Daniel was good at this. Really good. And not in an obvious, predatory way. He was psychologically sophisticated. He didn't rush. He didn't push. He mirrored her perfectly, reflected back exactly what she needed to hear. He talked about his own past heartbreak, made himself seem vulnerable. He remembered small details she'd mentioned weeks earlier. He sent flowers to her office with notes that felt personal, not generic. He'd cancel plans when he sensed she needed space, then check in later with a text that was just concerned enough without being clingy. Amora started recording their conversations. Tracking his movements. Following the money. Everything pointed to a long con, the kind where he'd propose, merge assets through marriage, then disappear with everything. But the evidence gathering took months. And during those months, something started happening that she didn't expect. She started feeling something. Not love. She wasn't falling in love with him. But she started understanding why women did. He wasn't just selling them a fantasy of romance. He was selling them a version of themselves they desperately wanted to be. The woman worth fighting for. The woman worth changing for. The woman who was different from all the others. She'd catch herself laughing at his jokes and forgetting to feel guilty about it. She'd feel genuinely disappointed when he cancelled plans for his so-called business trips. There were moments, brief moments, where she'd look at him across a dinner table and think, what if she was wrong? What if he was actually just a guy with a complicated past trying to do better? That's when she knew she was in trouble. Because the moment you start making excuses for someone, the moment you start rewriting their red flags into yellow caution signs, you're already caught. The trap isn't just the lies. It's how much you want the lies to be true. 3 months into the investigation, she got the break she needed. She found her. His wife. Her name was Lydia. She was a nurse, lived 2 hours outside the city. They had a mortgage together, joint bank accounts, a life. And according to public records, they'd been married for 5 years. At first, Amora thought, perfect. This is exactly what she needed. Proof of fraud, proof of bigamy, proof that would put him away and give Maya's death some meaning. But then she dug deeper into Lydia's finances. Lydia was receiving regular transfers from accounts Daniel controlled. Large amounts. Consistent patterns. This wasn't a woman being deceived. This was a woman being paid. Amora went through her social media. Found photos of them together from years ago. Then she noticed something. In the early photos, Lydia looked happy. Genuinely happy. But somewhere around year 2, the smile changed. It stayed on her face, but it stopped reaching her eyes. Amora started piecing together a theory that made her stomach turn. They were working together. Daniel would seduce women, gain their trust, get access to their assets. Then Lydia would show up, play the devastated wife, and together they'd either extort the woman into silence with threats of public humiliation, or use the chaos of the revelation to rob them blind while everyone was emotionally destroyed. They'd done this before. Multiple times. Amora found traces of other women. Closed bank accounts. Deleted social media profiles. One woman had filed a police report but dropped it after 2 days. Another had started a lawsuit but settled quietly. The pattern was clear. And it was brilliant in its cruelty. But here's what kept Amora up at night. She looked at those early photos of Lydia again. The ones where her smile was real. And she wondered, what if Lydia was victim number 1? What if Daniel had done to her exactly what he was doing to everyone else, and somewhere along the way, she decided that joining him was better than being destroyed by him? Amora didn't know if that made Lydia more sympathetic or more terrifying. Either way, she had everything she needed. Evidence. Patterns. Proof. All she had to do was hand it to the police and walk away. But that's not what she did. Because she realized something. If she just turned over evidence, they'd lawyer up. They'd claim she was a stalker, that she'd fabricated the relationship, that she was obsessed. They'd done it before. They'd do it again. She needed a confession. On record. Undeniable. So she kept playing the role. She let the relationship progress. And when December rolled around, Daniel started hinting about Valentine's Day. He told her it would be unforgettable. That he wanted to give her something she'd remember for the rest of her life. She knew what was coming. The proposal. The public spectacle. The performance of love designed to lock her in emotionally before the real con began. And she decided to let it happen. She contacted detectives she'd worked with before. Explained the situation. They were skeptical at first, concerned about her methods, but when she showed them the evidence of the other victims, they agreed to be on standby. The plan was simple. Let him propose. Get Lydia to show up and play her part. Record everything. Then have police move in before they could flip the script on her. Valentine's Day arrived. Amora spent the morning getting ready. Doing her hair, her makeup, choosing the dress. And here's the part she still can't explain, part of her was genuinely nervous. Part of her was actually wondering what ring he'd chosen, how he'd ask, what it would feel like to hear him say the words. She hated herself for that. For letting even a fragment of hope exist in a moment she knew was built on lies. A car arrived at 6. Black sedan, driver in a suit. Very theatrical. They drove to the most expensive restaurant in the city, the kind with a waiting list measured in months. But somehow Daniel had secured the entire private dining room. When she walked in, she actually gasped. She couldn't help it. The room was filled with roses. Hundreds of them. Red, white, pink. Candles everywhere. A string quartet in the corner playing something beautiful and melancholy. The table was set for two with crystal and gold and more flowers. It looked like a movie. Like a dream. Like every romantic fantasy you've ever had about being chosen, being celebrated, being loved enough that someone would move mountains just to make you smile. And she knew every single detail was calculated. Every rose, every candle, every note of music. It was designed to overwhelm her rational brain with emotion. To make her cry before he even said anything. It was working. Daniel arrived 15 minutes after her. Long enough for her to sit with the beauty of it, to let it sink in. He walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, carrying a bouquet of red roses even though the room was already full of them. He looked nervous. Genuinely nervous. His hand shook slightly when he handed her the flowers. He sat down across from her and just stared for a moment. Then he said, "I've been waiting my whole life to feel the way I feel when I'm with you. And tonight, I want to ask you to let me feel this way forever." The quartet started playing a new song. Something she recognized but couldn't place. He stood up. Walked around the table. Got down on one knee. Her heart was pounding. Not because she thought this was real. But because even knowing it was fake, her body was reacting like it was real. That's the thing about emotions. They don't wait for your brain to verify the truth. They just happen. He pulled out a ring. Diamond. Simple. Beautiful. "Amora," he said, and his voice cracked. Actually cracked. "Will you marry me?" The room went silent except for the music. She could hear her own breathing. She could feel tears on her cheeks and she didn't remember starting to cry. She opened her mouth to say yes. Not because she meant it. But because that was the plan. Say yes. Wait for Lydia. Get the confession. End this. But before she could speak, the doors opened. And she walked in. Lydia. She wasn't wearing some elaborate costume or theatrical outfit. She was wearing a wedding dress. But not the kind you buy for a show. It was simple. Ivory. A little worn at the hem. The kind of dress someone actually got married in and kept because it meant something once. She walked slowly. Calmly. Like she had every right to be there. Like she'd been invited. The quartet stopped playing. Daniel's face went completely white. He stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. Every eye in the room turned to her. The waitstaff. The musicians. Amora. Lydia walked straight to their table. Stopped about 3 feet away. Looked at Daniel. Then at Amora. Then back at Daniel. And she said, so quietly that everyone had to strain to hear, "You forgot something." Daniel couldn't speak. He just stood there, frozen. Lydia reached into her purse. Pulled out a photo. Set it on the table. It was a wedding photo. Daniel in a tux. Lydia in the same dress she was wearing now. Both of them smiling. Both of them young. Both of them looking like they believed in forever. She said, 5 years ago. The Plaza Hotel. You told me I was the love of your life. You said you'd never met anyone like me. You said I was different from everyone else. She turned to Amora. Her eyes weren't angry. They were just tired. Did he tell you that too? That you're different? Amora couldn't answer. Her throat was closed. Daniel finally found his voice. Lydia, this isn't what it looks like. She laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was worse than that. It was the laugh of someone who's heard that line so many times it doesn't even hurt anymore. It's exactly what it looks like, she said. You found another one. You did your research. You figured out what she needed to hear. You became that person. And now you're here, on Valentine's Day, performing the same proposal you've performed before. Did you even change the speech? Or is it the same one you used on me? The room was so quiet Amora could hear her own heartbeat. Daniel tried again. We've been separated. You know that. We've been living separate lives for over a year. That's true, Lydia said. She sat down at the table. Uninvited. She smoothed her dress. We have been separated. You've been here, building a life with her. I've been home, managing the accounts, tracking the transfers, keeping everything organized. She looked at Amora directly. That's what I do. I'm the accountant. The logistics. Daniel here, he's the face of the operation. The romance. The feelings. He's very good at feelings. Amora's hands went numb. This wasn't the plan. Lydia wasn't supposed to say this. She was supposed to play the devastated wife, they were supposed to try to extort her, and then police were supposed to step in. But she was calmly confessing. Right here. In front of everyone. Daniel sat down heavily. He looked like he might be sick. Lydia continued, still so calm it was frightening. I know what you're thinking. How could I do this? How could I help him hurt people? And honestly, I ask myself that every single day. She touched the fabric of her wedding dress. I wore this tonight because I wanted to remember who I was when I put it on the first time. When I believed everything he said. When I thought I was special. When I thought love looked like this. She gestured around the room. The roses. The candles. The performance. He did all this for me too. Different restaurant. Same flowers. Same speech. I said yes. I cried. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. And for 3 months, I was happy. Genuinely happy. The kind of happy you don't think exists in real life. Her voice finally broke a little. And then I found out about the others. The accounts. The lies. Everything. And I had 2 choices. Walk away with nothing and spend the rest of my life wondering if any of it was real. Or stay. Help him. At least understand how the trick worked. She looked at Daniel. I thought if I stayed close enough, I'd eventually see the real him. The person underneath the performance. But 5 years later, I still don't know if that person exists. She turned back to Amora. So I came here tonight to ask you something. When he proposed just now, before I walked in, how did it feel? Amora couldn't breathe. She didn't want to answer. Because the answer was too honest, too raw. It felt real, she whispered. Lydia nodded. Like she knew. Like she'd always known. That's the worst part, she said. It always feels real. That's what makes it so cruel. I'll never know which moments were genuine and which were calculation. I'll never trust my own memory of being happy. He didn't just steal money or time. He stole my ability to believe in my own feelings. That's when Amora made her decision. She reached into her purse. Pulled out her phone. Set it on the table. This has been recording since before Daniel arrived, she said. Everything you just said is documented. And there are 2 detectives waiting outside who've been building a case against you both for the past 4 months. The color drained from Lydia's face. Daniel's hand started shaking. My name is Amora Chen, she continued. I'm a private investigator. And 2 years ago, you destroyed my little sister. Her name was Maya. She was 24 years old. She trusted you. And when you disappeared with everything she had, the shame of it killed her. Literally killed her. She couldn't live with feeling that stupid, that used, that broken. She stood up. Her legs barely supported her. So yes, Lydia. I know exactly how it feels. I know what it's like to want so badly for something to be real that you ignore every warning sign. I know what it's like to hate yourself for falling for it. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. I really am. But it doesn't give you the right to do it to other people. To help him do it to other people. She walked to the door. Knocked twice. The detectives came in. As they read them their rights, Daniel finally looked at her. Really looked at her. And he said, for what it's worth, you were different. I actually... Don't, Amora said. Don't you dare. Because I'll never know if that's true or if it's just one more line you think I need to hear. And that's what you do. You make it impossible to know the difference. They led him out in handcuffs. Lydia went quietly. She didn't resist. Didn't cry. Just walked out in her wedding dress like she was going to a ceremony she'd already attended a dozen times before. The restaurant staff stood there, unsure what to do with all the roses and candles and the elaborate setup for a proposal that would never be complete. Amora sat back down at the table. The ring was still there. Small. Simple. Beautiful. She picked it up. Looked inside the band. There was an engraving. To my forever. D. The same ring. He'd used the same ring. Probably for Maya. Probably for others. A prop in a performance that played on repeat. She set it down. Walked out into the February cold. Her phone was buzzing. Text messages. Missed calls. And then she saw it. Someone in the restaurant had filmed the proposal before Lydia arrived. Posted it on social media. It was already going viral. Thousands of views. People commenting, "This is what true love looks like." Relationship goals. "I'm crying, this is so beautiful." They were celebrating a lie. Sharing it. Holding it up as the standard of romance. She watched the video. Watched herself cry. Watched herself start to say yes. Watched the genuine emotion on her face. And she realized something that made her feel sick. She couldn't tell the difference. Even knowing everything she knew. Even having planned the whole thing. In that moment, captured on video, her emotion was real. The hope was real. The wanting to believe was real. So what did that make it? If the feelings were real but the foundation was fake? If your heart was genuinely breaking over something that never existed? 3 weeks later, she sat in a visiting room. Grey walls. Plastic chairs. Glass between them. Lydia sat across from her. She wasn't wearing the wedding dress anymore. Just an orange jumpsuit. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. "I didn't think you'd come," Lydia said. "I didn't think I would either," Amora replied. They sat in silence for a minute. As you watch, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Your comments too. Why? Amora finally asked. That's what I keep trying to understand. You were a victim too. You could have walked away. Why did you stay and help him do it to other people? Lydia was quiet for a long time. Then, because walking away meant admitting I was wrong about everything. About him. About love. About my own judgment. And I couldn't survive being that wrong. So I told myself that if I understood how the trick worked, if I was on the inside of it, then I wasn't really a victim. I was just someone who'd learned an ugly truth about the world. That's a lie you told yourself. I know, she said. But it was a better lie than the truth. The truth was that I'd given 3 months of genuine love to someone who was incapable of returning it. And that made me feel so worthless I wanted to die. So I chose a different story. One where I was smart enough to beat him at his own game. She looked at Amora through the glass. But I never beat him. I just became him. And now I don't even know who I was before. The person who believed in love. The person who put on that wedding dress and thought she was starting forever. She's just gone. Amora understood that more than she wanted to. Do you think he ever felt anything real? She asked. Even for a second? Lydia smiled sadly. That's the question that'll haunt us both forever, isn't it? Because if he did, if even one moment was genuine, then we have to reckon with the fact that love and manipulation can exist in the same space. That someone can hurt you and care about you simultaneously. And I don't know which answer is worse. That it was all fake and we fell for a performance? Or that it was partially real and he chose to destroy us anyway? Amora left the prison with more questions than answers. Daniel took a plea deal. 7 years. Restitution to the victims they could identify. But most of the women never came forward. Too ashamed. Too afraid of judgment. Too exhausted by the idea of having to prove their own pain. Maya never got justice. Not really. Just the knowledge that he couldn't do it to anyone else for a while. Amora closed her business. She couldn't do that work anymore. Every case felt like reliving the same trauma on loop. She tried to move on. Tried to date. But every kind gesture felt suspicious. Every romantic moment felt staged. Every "I love you" sounded like a line from a script she'd heard before. She'd catch herself analyzing conversations. Looking for patterns. Waiting for the moment when the mask would slip. Her therapist said she had trust issues. She said she had pattern recognition. The therapist said they weren't mutually exclusive. A year later, on Valentine's Day, she got a package. No return address. Inside was a card. Handwritten. "I'm sorry about your sister. I mean that. And I'm sorry I made you doubt your own heart. You asked me once if any of it was real. The answer is, I don't know. I've been playing this role for so long I can't remember who I was before I learned that love is just a story we tell ourselves until someone better comes along. Maybe I loved you. Maybe I loved the version of myself I became around you. Maybe there's no difference. I hope someday you learn to trust again. You deserve that. Daniel." She burned it. But she memorized every word first. Because that's the thing about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't just steal your past. It steals your future. Every relationship becomes a crime scene you're investigating. Every declaration of love becomes a statement you're fact-checking. You become a detective in your own life. Always looking for evidence. Always waiting for the truth to walk in wearing a wedding dress and destroy everything you thought you knew. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Sometimes late at night, when she was alone, Amora still thought about that moment. On her knees in that restaurant. The roses. The candles. The ring. The way Daniel's voice cracked when he said her name. And she wondered, if Lydia hadn't walked in, if she hadn't been investigating, if she'd just been a regular woman falling for a man who seemed perfect. Would she have been happy? Even if it was built on lies? Even if it was destined to fall apart? Was a beautiful lie better than a lonely truth? She didn't have an answer. But every Valentine's Day, she thought about women all over the world saying yes to proposals in restaurants filled with roses. And she wondered how many of them were real. How many were performances? And whether the difference even mattered if the feelings in that moment were genuine. Love is the greatest con ever invented. We all know the statistics. We all know people lie. Cheat. Manipulate. Perform. But we keep showing up to the restaurant. We keep saying yes to the ring. We keep posting the videos and celebrating the moment. Because the alternative is giving up on the possibility of being chosen. Of being worth the roses and the candles and the carefully crafted speeches. And maybe that's the real question. Not whether you can trust someone else's love. But whether you can trust yourself to survive if that love turns out to be a lie. Can you? Amora still didn't know. Don't forget to like now, comment as I'll like to hear your thoughts. And last, subscribe to this channel for more.